Welcome, friends, to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. Today, we are here to talk to you about the 22-year mark of September 11th, the attack on our country. Ed Wallace and I are World Trade Center first responders, as we say in all of our videos. And today, we want to remember our brothers and sisters and all of our friends, families, and loved ones who we lost on September 11th. Ed, how are you today? I know you went to church this morning. I went out to the cemetery. A solemn day, right?
Yeah, a very somber day. You know, we both lost brothers today. Yours in the World Trade Center, and mine died of brain cancer this morning, the morning of the attack. You know, I think, and I believe, saving his wife's life, possibly my life, because I was responding to the Trade Center after investigating a double homicide in Queens. And then I got notified that my brother had passed away. He had been fighting brain cancer since 1997. And his wife worked at the Port Authority at the World Trade Center, South Tower, 67th floor. And also a good friend of ours was waiting at a bus stop underneath the North Tower before the first plane hit, when he was notified that my brother had passed away. And so he left a co-worker at the bus stop and went to the nearby Greek Orthodox church to say a prayer. And then that first plane hit and killed his co-worker that he was standing next to. So, I mean, there's a lot of those stories like that.
Yeah. I mean, when you told me the story about your brother, my heart broke for you, because, you know, you took care of him, you watched over him as he was fighting his battle. And on this day, the day that really socked us all, right? It was a gut punch for all of us. To have that happen, it's just a double whammy. May he continue to rest in peace. I had a picture of him on the second screen here, and for some reason, Streamyard's not letting me show it.
Okay, I can bring it up.
Yeah, I think I have it. I think I got it, Ed.
Okay.
So here's a photo of Ed's brother here on the right, Ed and his wife, Margaret.
That's after, you can see his head is bald. He had been battling the cancer during this period, and he wanted to do this photograph with my wife and I so headquarters accommodated us, and the photo unit took this photo of us. He had been going through several surgeries on the glioblastoma plus radiation treatment, and then he went for a series of chemos. But like I said, he was diagnosed with stage 4 glioblastoma in 1997. He was only given months to live, and he fought this thing and fought it and died the morning of 9/11, several years later.
Unbelievable. Let's say hello to everybody and thank everyone for showing up here in the chat. Our moderators, our replay viewers, thank you to everyone who's here. Let's unpack that. Just made a commemorative pint glass for September 11th, so it's available in our merch store. It's beautiful. I just saw it before we went live, actually. So I'm going to link that in the store after the live stream is over, Ed. Thank you, Kristen, and thank you to everyone who sent beautiful messages and kind words. My phone has been blowing up all morning. Ed, we do this pretty much every year, but last year, for whatever reason, I kind of skipped it. I was really feeling down, but I have to tell you, this year, on year 22, I'm feeling extremely down, and I went out to the cemetery, and there were so many people at the World Trade Center garden where my cousin Ralph is laid to rest, just a small part of his leg. And my uncle, his father, who since passed after he passed from the World Trade Center attack. But it's just I don't know. I can't put my foot on it. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know. My son's home. He took the day off to hang out with me, so I'm hanging out with my older son, and it's all good. But we got each other, and we always are here to talk about this stuff. And I'm thankful for our friendship and the friendship of all of our fellow brothers in blue. My brother, retired Lieutenant Sergeant Bill, Detective Phil, Mike Geary, Billy Ryan from the bomb squad, Timmy Acosta, Lieutenant Pete, retired Irish detective. And we could just keep going on and on about this brotherhood, but we have our community. I opened up my phone. There was 22 messages before I went live.
Oh yeah. I've been getting them all day. I mean, it's funny too, because my alumni from all my training courses throughout the world, international, every morning, 9/11, my phone lights up, and it'll light up all day with my students texting me and emailing me, and giving me prayers and saying that I'm in their thoughts and prayers and so forth. So it's a great support to me.
Yeah, we have a great support group, and like you said, your students, your former colleagues. The messages just keep coming in, and I want to show this one. This is from Antoinette. She is a retired sergeant who I worked with in the warrant squad, and she was a cop then. She sent this to me, and she sends one of these every year with a really nice message on the back, and she takes a picture right at where my cousin Ralph is on the wall, and she sends this, makes a personalized greeting, and she never forgets. Every year I have them. Gosh, probably she's been doing it over a decade. So thank you, Antoinette, for being a great friend and a great human being. I have this special, this 9/11 tribute, but before I play it, it's 23 minutes long. I'm not going to play the entire thing because it would take up a lot of the time. We have an hour here that we want to kind of talk about our stories and what we did that day. I'm just going to give a brief one on mine. It was the morning of. I had worked a 4 to 12, and I didn't come home until like 2 in the morning at an arrest the night before. And my wife woke me up and said, "You got to wake up and you got to see what's going on TV." And my kids were little, and I cleared my face and looked at it, and before I could even look, my department phone that I had was ringing. Like I had like 6 missed calls from it. And it was one of those Nextels. You remember the Nextels that we had? Ed,
Yeah.
Direct Connect. And my sergeant was on there, who recently just reconnected with me here on YouTube. He sent me a message in the comment section. Said, "Hey, remember me, Sergeant Palusco?" So Terry was direct connecting me and reaching out to me. He was like, "Let's go. We got to go in." So my oldest was in school, and my wife went and got him, and both my boys and my wife were tugging at my pant leg and crying and asking me not to leave, because as you remember that morning, we didn't know if there was dozens of more planes attacking. We knew that the World Trade Center got hit and the second tower wasn't hit yet at that point and that was the hardest part of my day, is leaving my family behind and telling them I got to go, and looking back at them as I left my house, where I live here right now. And I didn't even think twice about it, because I knew that I had to go in. It was remember, everybody was a must. You had to show up. Whether the only way you were excused is if you were on vacation, if you had your papers in for vacation. And even some of those guys, if they weren't away, they came in. So I went in, and almost 20 hours later, I came home covered in white dust in the backyard, and I took my clothing off outside, and my wife was there to wait for me, put everything in bags, cleaned it up, and went back and did it over and over and over again. Bucket brigade, all of that stuff. I drove a bus in with 70 cops because I was department bus qualified on the 12th. Just all kinds of craziness. I can go on, and I really made it a smaller version of everything that happened. But Ed, I want to go to you because I know that you have a story as well.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, I was processing a double homicides in La Frac, Queens. And as soon as I wrapped up, we heard over the radio that a small plane had hit the World Trade Center North Tower. And so my partner and I started responding in, and I got notified that my brother had passed away. So my partner dropped me off at the 6-8 precinct in Brooklyn, and I jumped in my private vehicle and ran home in uniform. I didn't, basically had the crime scene uniform on. I ran home to my brother's house. Rather, I ran to my brother's house where my mother and father were, my sisters were there, and my brother had passed away, and he was in his hospital bed, and his wife and children were there. He had 2 small children at the time, David and Brianna, and they weren't really fully aware of what was going on. And I told them to put the television on, and we actually watched from his deathbed the second plane hit the tower on the television. And I was trying to get a hold of my sergeant. He responded to the World Trade Center, Sergeant Joe Bloses, and the cell lines went down, and I couldn't get a hold of anybody because I was trying to warn them to be careful about the building because of the structure of the building, and I was fearful that it was going to collapse. So I couldn't get a hold of anybody, and I was very upset. So as I said, my brother had passed away. We had to wait there for the funeral director to come get the body because his doctor signed off on the death certificate, and took the body, and we had a 1-day wake, 1-day funeral, and I was back to work on the 3rd day after his death. I went down to ground zero. I was working the 4 to 12 shift. Well, I shouldn't say 4 to 12 because they were 12-hour shift, but I was working the night shift. And so my wife and I, we had 2 little children at the time too. So they were in grammar school, and we were all put on 12-hour shifts, as you remember. And so we were like passing the kids off, like ships passing through the night and handing the kids off to each other as we each went to work. I did the night shift. She did the day shift, but thank God she didn't have to work the pile at ground zero. She did volunteer and go to the landfill several times, but she didn't have to. She was working in 1PP at that time at the Hate Crimes Task Force. And it was very difficult. The kids were in grammar school. And I was back to work for several days, working at night, and it was surreal. I mean, it looked like something from a Gothic horror story, like post World War II, a bombed out Gothic church at night with the flame and the smoke coming up and the artificial lighting. It was so surreal, and then the rancid smell and of the fire and the particles, the toxic particles floating through the air. And I knew in my heart, when we went there, we had a safety briefing, and I knew in my heart that it was not safe. The air was not safe, even though we kept being told that the air was safe. The air was safe. And I wore a mask more than most people, and I still ended up getting sick.
Yeah, so many of us got sick, and this is raw footage from September 12th. By Steve Grogan. He's a photographer. I got permission to use this footage. I sent an email to him, and this is his father, who was a photographer as well. So he uploaded these images onto YouTube, and this is I'm gonna put it on because there's actual audio with this, and you can hear the chaos. They remove a survivor here, and everyone starts clapping. Remember, there was one person that they removed the second day. It's right here.
Well, this is a combination of volunteers and emergency responders. You had a lot of the trade people here, the iron workers. In the beginning, it wasn't organized. It just people came down. They weren't credentialed. We didn't know who all was there, and who they were representing. And we had volunteer self-dispatch law enforcement and firefighters and EMS from around the country and overseas as well. We had foreign volunteers just show up on site in the early stages before we got control of the site.
These are construction workers here.
Yeah, they're iron workers. Yeah,
and one guy's wearing a mask, all the rest not.
Yeah, well, those masks that they were wearing were not appropriate for They're wearing N95 or P95s, or and they're not appropriate for that environment because those are just for particulates. You can see those cloud of smoke in the background. Well, they contain volatile organic compounds and toxic materials, and the paper masks, the N95, were not made to protect you from that.
Ed, the first day and the second day, I had no mask, period.
Yeah.
What I was doing was taking my shirt and putting it over my mouth. And I remember going into Wall Street and using the bathrooms and showers. And we were showering ourselves off with our guns attached. And I had my gun belt on, but I wasn't in full uniform because the detail that I was in, you didn't have to be in full uniform. So we were kind of like plain clothes / gun. We still had the gun belt on. And then I remember coming outside of Wall Street and seeing a military tank in the street. That was the night of September 11th. But this is the chaos that ensued on day 2.
Right, and you see all that toxic fumes coming out of this, made by the fires, which burned for months, and embedded in all of that were your heavy metals, your carcinogenic materials.
This is the bucket brigade.
This is the bucket brigade. What ended up happening is the volunteers would form lines up the pile with and 2 lines, one to bring the bucket up, one to fill it, and one to bring it back down. And then at the bottom of the bucket brigade would be myself and the other members of the crime scene unit under a tent with sifters, and we would sift through the buckets looking for evidence, body parts, and remains.
I operated on this bucket line for probably a good 5 days, 4 or 5 days. And then remember, they brought in the heavy machinery and they stopped that. So I would say for the first 3 to 5 days, I was here in different locations. And what I remember most about this is that there was voids there, and you didn't know, or pieces of building. You can see, I think this was where the hotel was there.
The Vista, or later it was the Marriott.
So I was down by the Marriott, and there was I think a Deutsche Bank building. There was these big buildings. These are the ones across World Financial. But we were always worried that pieces were going to fall off the building, and the FD, the fire department chiefs and the bosses had those air horns, and they would blow those air horns when they would want us to come off the pile.
Right, and especially when that one building by Zuccotti Park kept swaying, and we felt it was going to fall down. So if it was swaying too much, the air horn would go off, and we'd evacuate the site. Now, there was a question in the chat about there was a question in the chat about how old we were at the time of the response. I was 38 and Ron was 37.
Yep, 37 and 38. But this really gives you a great perspective of what was going on down here.
Now, you see that crushed fire truck. Well, we recovered bodies from underneath the truck.
Yeah,
several a mother and daughter, in my case, a mother and daughter, were there when the tower was coming down, and they dove underneath the truck, hugging each other, thinking that the truck would provide them shelter, and the truck collapsed on them and killed them.
My ex niece's husband, so my ex nephew, technically, right? He was fire department, FDNY, a younger guy. He was maybe 5 years on the job, but he was telling me stories about what you just described, and not only just under the fire trucks, but there were regular vehicles, of course.
Yeah, cars
going past the World Trade Center is a normal thing. And there were people that he was finding underneath these cars, pancaked. And I asked him, what did you guys do when you found them? There was no crime scene. There was no like, oh, wait. He said that they used like shovels to scoop them up, put them in. Like,
well, first,
this is him. Yeah. This is him telling me this. And I almost couldn't believe that. I was like, what?
Yeah, well, we photographed them, we documented the location, and then we bagged them and brought them to the temporary morgue. Now, what you're looking at here is the exterior facade of one of the towers that actually impaled through the street and down into the subterranean portions of the street. And so, in fact, on Church Street, several of those exterior facades impaled the street and went right through into the subway tunnel. And then those subways were couldn't be used until they could pull the steel portions of the exterior facade out of the tunnel and then shore up the tunnel and fix that. And again, here's the bucket brigades.
Yep. This is a prime example of what I was doing.
Now, there were several bridges that crossed over West Street from the World Trade Center to the
over the West Side Highway.
Yeah, over the West Side Highway to the I forgot what it was called. It was another
like 5 buildings, 4 or 5 buildings were there.
I'm having a brain fart because it's also a trade center. But anyhow,
it was the World Financial or no. I know what you're talking about because that was a detail for a long time after.
Yeah. All that land there, that those buildings to the left of the World Trade Center, to the west of the World Trade Center, was recaptured land from the Hudson, used from the land from excavating the soil to build the foundations for the World Trade Center. So that was all recaptured land that left side of the World Trade Center was on.
And you remember this piece stayed up for so long, and they finally.
That's what I'm saying. At nighttime, when that was illuminated with the smoke, and it looked like a Gothic cathedral damaged in World War II in Europe. Now, if you see this right here, you see that pile.
Hold on, let me go back to it.
Yeah. Okay, stop. Oh, go back right there. Stop. I'll go back a little further and stop with that piece of steel hanging out.
Yeah, that's what we were worried about when coming.
Go back a little bit more. Go back. Go back. So that's the American Express building. If you can go back a little bit, right there. Okay. So now that piece of steel is hanging out of the building, and below it was the exterior wall, west wall of the North Tower that came across the street as the building collapsed. And it rode up, elevated from the street upward to the top of a glass atrium. For those of you who know, there's a glass atrium there. And you might have, if you saw the movie Boomerang with Eddie Murphy and Halle Berry, Grace Jones comes in on a chariot in this particular glass atrium in here, in the World Financial Center. And there was an emergency staircase in the northwest corner of the North Tower, and a firefighter was in there when the building was collapsing, and he rode the wall across the street in between these two buildings that you see here. And if you let it scroll a little further down, you'll see the pile. Stop right there. You'll see the pile as it looks like it's going from low to upward. And at the top of that pile by the glass atrium, we recovered that firefighter's body there. It was only held intact because of the strength of their duty uniforms. Their firefighting uniforms are very strong.
Yeah. And I remember the radio transmissions. I actually heard it live because I had a take-home department radio as well, of Officer Smith, only female NYPD,
Yes.
Moira Smith.
Moira Smith, yeah.
Moira Smith. She, the radio transmissions, I'm going to play that in a little bit. Those are riveting. They're shocking. She's gasping for air, and she was trapped.
Now, that bunker gear that the firefighters were wearing, a reporter had gotten his hands on a bunker gear of another from a firefighter that didn't know it was stolen. It was taken from him. He must have just left it around, and then this reporter took it. And when we went up on that pile to get that firefighter, that reporter took a camera out from underneath the bunker gear, and then everybody realized it wasn't a firefighter and that it was a reporter. And believe me, he made a very big mistake that day amongst the firefighter crews that were there, and basically was taken off the pile.
He didn't get the shit kicked out of him.
Well, I cannot confirm or deny that didn't happen.
There you go. This is if this doesn't give you guys a clear view and vision of, this is a bird's eye view of what any first responders, myself included, Ed, days later when he responded, 3 days later, and it's miraculous that you actually had the strength mentally. I know you physically were there, but mentally, after losing your brother and laying him to rest, and then coming to deal with this disaster, this attack on our country, of this magnitude and seeing this, Ed, it gives me a newfound respect for how strong you really are, because I'm not quite sure. I know that I would have stepped up and did it, but I don't know how you mustered up that strength to do that.
Well, first of all, if if my brother hadn't been killed that day, I would have been there. And I'm a senior person in the crime scene unit, and I have a lot of the crime scene personnel that I train. So I needed to get there to support them and to make sure that they were okay and doing what needed to be done correctly. And second of all, because of this, many of my brother's co-workers and many of my co-workers couldn't attend my brother's wake or funeral. Yeah. So, and even family members from around the country couldn't come up because the air traffic was shut down.
Yeah, nobody could come. Look at this volunteer ambulance here. It looked like one of those ambulettes that transports people back and forth to a hospital.
Yeah,
completely covered, but it still managed to survive. Just because
now we had all these NGOs, these non-government organizations, all these churches and so forth, all the feel goods would come. And in the what's the name of the location across the street from the World Trade Center? What did they call it? I had a buddy that lived there. What is it called?
Series of buildings is like
no, but it's called something. I can't remember what it's called. I'm having a senior moment. But hey, Joey, Brooklyn, maybe you remember what it's called across the street.
I'm gonna Google it.
Yeah. Anyhow, Ian, my son's here. Ian, if you remember what it's called across the street from the World Trade Center where Tom Chan used to live. Anyhow, they set up their tents, and they and had chafing dishes full of food, and they were feeding us. And they were let in by the Office of Emergency Management to do this and volunteer, and their hearts were in the right place. But we shouldn't have been allowed to eat in this environment, especially this video right here. You see all this smoke and ash and everything that's falling out. Well, guess where that fell out? It fell out into our food. And people were eating and smoking and drinking in this environment, and they should not have been allowed to do that, because
I was eating in a restaurant right on the side where Burger King is there, where our little temporary headquarters was.
Yeah. We took over Burger King. That's right. Yeah. Right. So you're eating, breathing, and you're ingesting and inhaling all of these toxic particulates that are in this air, and it's sprinkling on your food like Parmesan cheese.
Right. And this is where they get the guy out. This is, I wondered initially when I first watched this why they were all clapping, but this is September 12th, and they got a firefighter, I believe, out that was trapped. He wasn't deep trapped, but he was trapped under the debris. And let's just take a listen to this, because all of a sudden clapping and stuff happening. I was like, why are these guys clapping? Comes out from over here, right in front of this guy. This guy right.
Yeah, my son came up with the answer. Battery Park City.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. That guy right there.
Yeah.
He's trapped for a day. And he's able to walk out of there.
Well, that's it, because after that, nobody got out.
The backstory is that he wasn't deep trapped, but he was pinned, his legs and stuff, with no injuries. He was able to walk away from it. It was a miracle.
Now, everybody was on pins and needles at the time of this. And I remember I'm doing the 12-hour shifts. I'm home. I'm trying to get some sleep. And here's another thing, too. We had face-to-face relief, which means I was on the night shift. So when the day shift comes, I can't leave until the day shift comes and relieves me. Okay. So I go home, and you're going home with all this particulate on you. if you didn't clean yourself off, because at the time here, there was no place to clean yourself off. There was no decon facilities, decontamination facilities. So that particulate was on your uniform, your clothing, and we weren't wearing personal protective equipment like the suits that I would normally wear as a hazmat tech. And so we get into the department vehicles, and my partner and I would drive back to the substation at the 6-8 precinct and drop off the car, and then jump in our personal vehicles, contaminating our personal vehicles. And then we'd go home and bring it home. And, like for me, I would go into the garage and remove my stuff. But, I'm trying to get some rest. It's a couple days into the incident. And all of a sudden, Sister Mary, the principal of St. Patrick's School in Staten Island, in Richmond Town, Staten Island, calls me up. And she's frantic, and she asked me, "Can you come up to the school and help me out? We're having a run on the school by the parents trying to take their kids out because someone has falsely put out over the internet that terrorists are on Staten Island and they're trying to attack us." And, immediately I call operations, and operations say, "Yeah, it's a bogus report. It's not true. It's not true." And so I go racing up to the school, and she called a bunch of off-duty cops, and we go up there, and we're trying to calm the parents down because they're trying to rip their kids out of the school. And we're trying to tell them, look, the safest place for these kids right now is in the schools. Leave them here. They're fine. These rumors, these are rumors. They're not true. Calm down, please. Please.
Yeah. And here's the crazy thing too, is like there was so many people making bad decisions because they were just panicked, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was the most sensible decision. Keep them in where they're not going to be out walking or being out and about. School, again, is going to be a secure place. But Christy Todd Whitman, remember the governor from New Jersey?
Former governor of New Jersey, and she was the EPA commissioner for President Bush.
Yeah. So somebody here put in Jules is Misty W, and thank you for being a channel member, and thank you for your super chat. The powers that said the air quality was safe with a straight face, it's beyond me how they did that.
Well, I will tell you how they did it, because I was a part of the lawsuit and I had the information from the lawsuit. She was misinformed by her lab personnel. Her lab personnel took samples not from the site specific, but they took it from the perimeters up on by Canal Street, or north of Canal Street, south of Battery Park, and then east of the site. And they didn't take air samples from within the site, or they didn't give us air monitors to pull samples from us from when we were working on the pile. So the air samples they collected, first they collected the wrong type of air samples, and second of all, they did the wrong analysis on the materials. So their testing did come back safe, but it was improper testing done on improper collected samples. So we have a saying in forensics when you submit stuff to the laboratory, right? Shit in, shit out. All right. Yeah. If you submit garbage to the laboratory, your results are going to be garbage. And so that came out in the lawsuit about all the problems with the United States Environmental Protection Agency and their screening and testing.
I remember all the telephone poles or utility poles had, not all of them, some of them had those air testing stations, and they were all around the perimeter and blocks moving forward. And they were saying that they're continually testing the air and it's safe, which was hogwash. This is a body being removed from inside.
So what happens when they found initially, the way it was done is we were, as a crime scene unit, we were attached to an urban search and rescue team, or some of the NYPD or the FDNY search and rescue team. So like initially 2 members of the crime scene unit, whoever was working that night, were attached to the various search and rescue teams. And each search and rescue team was given a specific grid in the 16-acre site that is the World Trade Center. And we would go in with those teams. They would search. If they found a body part or human remains, we would come in, photograph, document, GPS locate if we could, and then bag them and bring them to the temporary morgue that was stationed outside in Battery Park City.
And this looks like a full body recovery here. There's multiple fire personnel carrying this victim out.
Now we were with those urban search and rescue teams. We were crawling around in the subterranean parts. Because the World Trade Center had subterranean mall that was multi-story underneath the World Trade Center below grade, leading to the PATH train and also to the subways down there. And there were all kinds of malls, and so those were being searched. And you know, you were in danger of the pile shifting and then the floors collapsing and then you'd collapse. And now, if you ever saw a photograph of me, you know, I was wearing at that time an Alice rig over my uniform with a butt pack, and in the butt pack I had all my survival gear plus an Alice rig to attach to in case I needed to be repelled or pulled out. I also had my K-bar knife. I had water supply, and I had tourniquets and medicines and bandages and so forth in case we got hurt, because there was no place safe to fall here. If you fell, you were getting hurt. You could be impaled on a piece of rebar. Now, the only thing that was left.
That's what I remember. I remember just looking when I was doing the bucket brigade, looking down, and you couldn't actually see how far down it was, but
yeah,
if you slipped, you could fall down. Your whole body could go down there.
Yeah, I had in my back, in that pack in my back, I had rope. I had you know, to try if I had to rescue myself. You know, I had means to do it. I had my carabiners. I had ropes. You know, you name it. And everybody was looking at me and saying, "Man, you know, you're hardcore, or you know, that you don't need that." I said, "Okay, yeah, it's all fun and games until you fall down into one of these holes here."
But Ed, even with all those precautions, we still have the breathing issues, and you have cancer issues and things. Do you want to get into any of that?
Yeah, well, as you said, Christy Todd Whitman's reported to the world and then to Mayor Giuliani that the air was safe. So every time we came in for our shifts, we'd have a safety briefing with the site safety officer, who was a member of the FDNY. Okay. By the way, stop right there. Stop right there. There's the glass atrium. Everybody see it right there?
At the lower part here.
Yeah, and then you can see the American Express building in the center of these two buildings where that piece of steel was hanging out.
Hold on.
Okay.
Right here.
Yeah, and so that's the glass atrium that the west facade of the North Tower fell onto, where at the I can't do it with my if you could take your cursor and go to the extreme right of the glass atrium, up, down, just go straight right there. That's where the firefighter was found, up on the interior of the exterior facade. Having said that, also if you go back, you see all those boats. What many people don't realize is that there was a huge effort by all these water vessels in the harbor at the time that was coordinated by the Coast Guard to evacuate Lower Manhattan from this area. I mean, these boats would just pull up to the bulkheads at the Battery Park there, and people would jump into the boats, and then they would be ferried off to New Jersey and other parts of Staten Island, New Jersey, and so forth, to get away from Lower Manhattan. You know, and you'll see abandoned baby carriages and all this stuff at the waterfront, and you're like, what happened? What happened? And no, they jumped into boats, and the Coast Guard organized this. And if you ever see, there's documentaries on what these people did with the ferries and tugboats.
Evacuated thousands of people out of New York into New Jersey, into Staten Island.
Yeah.
And it was just a tremendous amount of effort done by the boating community and commercial vessels. So everybody came together on that day, and this is just a reminder for everyone, for people in the chat. I'm certain that this is going to be first time seeing this type of footage. Unless you stumbled across this footage up until I think last night, I hadn't even seen this. So
and so you see everybody walking around with those plastic hard hats, right? You know, as if that plastic hard hat is going to save you.
I have it.
Yeah, I have it too. But as if that plastic hard hat's going to save you if a piece of steel coming out of the top of a building falls on you. Okay.
In 2020, I actually took out I had a green helmet with the strap. We took duct tape and strapped a flashlight on it. Goggles, I had it all wrapped up in a bag, and I hadn't opened it since then till 2020, and I opened it on a live stream. I'll link it in the description if you guys want to see it. It gave me chills, but as you said, Ed, that was a joke. You know, you might as well have just just put a baseball hat on.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they should have removed the hanging steel pieces before that we were allowed to go underneath it. But that's a different story.
And
Do you
this,
have it? Do you have any of those pictures of me down at Ground Zero? 'Cause-
I may have them saved, but I don't have them queued up. I thought you
Oh
had.
yeah, I'll find it. But anyhow, so yeah, so in September in 2002, I got rushed to the hospital in Staten Island while I was on duty. I thought I was having a heart attack, and it turns out um, it was the first disease that I was diagnosed with from Ground Zero was acid reflux. But during the ruling out of the homicide, they had taken a chest X-ray of me, and they found all the scar tissue in my lungs. And so the emergency room doctor that was treating me said, "Hey, had you ever had pneumonia before?" And I said, "No, I've never had pneumonia." So he shows me the X-rays. He said, "Your lungs are scarred from top to bottom. Do you have any previous X-rays that you can compare this to? We can compare this to." And I said, "Yes, I'm a hazmat tech, and our medical division at LAFRAC takes a chest X-ray as a part of the hazmat tech medical that we do annually." He says, "Can you get it?" And I said, "Yeah, I got it." And he said, "You need to take this and take that to a pulmonologist." And so I made an appointment with a pulmonologist, and he compared the two X-rays, the July 2001 X-ray to the August 2002 X-ray. And he said, "Well, in July 2001, this wasn't there. None of the scar tissue that I'm seeing in here." He says, "We're going to have to perform open chest surgery on you and remove several sections of your lung and send it to the Mayo Clinic for biopsy." Okay, I'm going to stop right there. That's the telephone building that's just north of the World Trade Center. It would have been by the North Tower, and all that damage on top was created from the plane and the North Tower collapsing. And because of that damage to the telephone building there, Lower Manhattan lost the 212 area code for the telephone, and they had to initiate 646 area code for Lower Manhattan. So headquarters lost its telephones because of the damage to that building right there.
Okay. Yeah, and
So
a considerable distance from the site too. It's just amazing. This,
yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Ned.
So I bring it to the pulmonologist, and I get a second opinion because these guys talking about operating on me and removing 3 sections of my lung and sending it for analysis by the Mayo Clinic. And so the second doctor looked at everything. He said, "Yeah, you got to do this. We got to figure out what this is because it could be any number of things, none of which are good for you." And so I did it. I had the surgery. I was hospitalized. I had a chest tube. I was in there for about a week. Finally got sent home. And it's sent off to the clinic. They did the analysis, and they found out that I had sarcoidosis, which was the second disease related to my exposure at Ground Zero, which is an uncurable, unknown origin autoimmune disease. Your immune system basically overreacts to the foreign particulate in that World Trade Center debris. Nobody knows what actually it is, but it triggered this response. And what happens is, like a normal immune system, when it finds a foreign particulate in your body, will go and attack it, right? If it's deemed a threat, and then by attacking it, they normally put like a little scar tissue around it and cocoon it, and then the immune system stops. Well, with sarcoidosis, the immune system doesn't stop. It keeps creating the scar tissue wherever it finds this particulate until it destroys the organ that the particulate was in. So many people die of sarcoidosis from sarcoidosis-related issues, where like it short circuits the electrical system in the heart, or it gets into the central nervous system and then causes damage there. So the only thing they can give you, because there is no cure for this, is prednisone, the steroid, to suppress your immune system. And that's what I had been taking for many years. But then it led to I was having sinus problems. The World Trade Center clinic stood up sometime afterwards, and they sent me to an ENT, and the ENT did all kinds of testing and said we needed to conduct surgery, and went up into my sinuses, and they removed precancerous polyps and straightened out my nose because I was having all kinds of sinus issues. and I had 2 of those surgeries, one after the other, because when they cut me loose from the first surgery, I was still bleeding, and it was causing me to vomit blood, and they rushed me back to the hospital, unpacked my nose, and then I had to go in and cauterize all these bleeding parts inside of my nose. All right, so I had that one, and then a couple of years later, in the interim, though, I'm getting all these rashes. I'm getting all these rashes, the unexplained rashes, and I have to go through dermatologists with steroid creams and so forth, and pills. Then cancer. I get prostate cancer, and even though my PSA number was low, the doctor kept saying, "Hey, last year it was." First year we tested you, PSA was 1, and then the next year it was 2. Now it's 3. Can we do a biopsy? And I said, yeah, sure. So they did the biopsy, and they take 12 samples of your prostate, and how they do this is they knock you out, go through your rectum, and inject the needles through your lower intestine into the prostate, pull out the samples. And the doctor calls me back and says, hey, came back positive, you have prostate cancer. And good news is we caught it early. And additional good news, it's only in the prostate. It's not in any of the tissues or the lymph nodes around the prostate. And so he says, he gave me all my options. And I said, well, I'm not having any kids anymore. And so let's just get rid of the prostate. Let's take the whole thing. I don't want to have to worry about it coming back or metastasizing and going someplace. Yeah. Right. So take it. Okay. And so I had the World Trade Center Clinic did the surgery. The world-renowned surgeon there did the surgery and robotically removed my prostate. And that's where I learned about Kegels, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Oh. All right. Then
discussions on this. Yes.
Yes. Then shortly thereafter, I lost my gallbladder. Okay. And the same year, it was like 1 year apart, almost a year, and I lost the gallbladder.
What year was this, Ed?
Oh, I don't know. I'm 4 years cancer free now, so minus 4 years from today, it's 23. Yeah. So that would be 19.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow.
And now I have other things going on. I have some neurological issues now. Every once in a while, my hands will start shaking, and so I'm having that watched. I'm gonna have to take a beta blocker to keep the hands from, as they call them hand tremors. Right. So hopefully this doesn't lead to Parkinson's disease.
God forbid. Mm-hmm. So this is, a prime example of someone who took major precautions down at Ground Zero, and now you see all of these guys running around, and half of them don't even have masks on day 2. I know I didn't have one of those respirators that they assigned us with the 2 things on the side. I didn't get that until probably day 5.
Well, that's what I was wearing the whole time because we were hazmat techs. We had that equipment.
I wish I had that.
But it didn't work, did it?
But I was wearing, exactly. And I'm wearing paper masks. So you question why somebody like yourself who took some precautions and was there on day 3, and somebody like me who was there the day and then the days after without any protection. I was at some points, because it was a beautiful day. September 11th was a gorgeous, spot. There was no clouds in the skies. It was spot on, perfect day. But it was hot, and it was hot the days that followed. So when we were down there, we were sweating. I remember on the second day, women from Long Island and all over the place, and men and women were coming up, because that was before the National Guard started securing off the perimeter. They were coming up to us and offering us water to drink and then water to pour on us to get that white dust all off of our eyes and our face. And I remember having that pasty dust in my mouth and spitting it out, and still 12 hours later going home and spitting out and coughing up and hacking up that white stuff all into my nose, into my cat. And I had sinus surgery. I've had problems, acid reflux, as you said, sleep apnea.
Yeah.
None of that. I had none of that prior to this.
Right. No, initially when I was working down at Ground Zero, and I had taken the mask off because I was outside of the pile, I would be coughing. And then when I went away from Ground Zero, the cough would stop. But then there came a point when it wouldn't stop at all. I was just coughing all the time,
Yeah.
you know, and it just didn't stop. And so, and Tiff writes, doesn't it depend on your personal makeup? Yeah, your genetics is a big player in this. In fact, like my partner that I worked with at the time, his name was Tommy Forte. And man, this guy was a chain smoker. He smoked like unbelievable amounts of time, you know, packs and packs a day. And I would tell him, stop, it's not good for you. That was before this, right? So then I get these respiratory diseases and he doesn't get any respiratory diseases. And he said that's because his lungs were scarred already and protected from these other diseases.
He had the wall of protection from the tobacco use.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. New York mom, Adrienne, thank you. God bless you both and all who came down to help us. Yeah, many civilians, iron workers, regular Joe Q citizens came down. And as I described, mothers, fathers, were holding signs on the West Side Highway that we love you. I received this many years ago from one of our viewers. It's a, hold on.
There you go.
It's a World Trade Center and the financial district clock, and it's like gold plated or whatever. But Jonna sent this to me probably in 2019 or maybe even earlier. It was when I first started YouTube. So thank you. I don't see her around much anymore, but thank you, Jonna, for that beautiful gift that was sent. And there's many other little trinkets. Heidi Cakes made a cake thanking us. She didn't send it to us, but she made it for one of our customers, and she took a picture and sent it to me. I want to play this because this is when this building is starting to collapse. It's shifted. I'm going to go to it. You can see there's the crane that's up, this heavy equipment, and everybody is being told to run away from it because they were afraid that this building right here was going to collapse into the street. So let me let this play. Everybody running off. That was just a little piece of that, and I thought it was just to show some of the dangerous parts. Ed, you see something in the chat? I love to see you smiling on days.
No,
like
I'm thinking because I see things in the images there. I remember because you know, initially there was the feel good NGOs with the tents, and then the World Yacht Cruises that used to do dinner cruises around Manhattan brought several of their boats, dinner cruise boats, down to Battery Park Harbor, and we were using those boats to rest and to eat inside of those boats. But as I said, there was no decontamination facility, so we ended up bringing all the toxic material into those boats, and we contaminated those boats to the point that they couldn't be decontaminated, and the city had to pay World Yacht to replace those boats.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was only later, I think, about October or November or end of November, the Army Corps of Engineers built a decon facility and a huge mess hall tent for us to go to and eat safely.
That was outside the medical examiner's office. At least Red Cross had a tent there. I remember when I went for detail for many months into 2002, where we would go on the overnight and do a 12-hour there with identification. We were in with medical examiners office. Body parts would come in, they would identify them, and I did a live stream about one fully intact body that came in from a court officer, and without going into all the details, took him down for x-ray, dental, all of that stuff, and family identification. His wallet was still in his pocket with pictures of his kids, and it was just so sad, and I highlighted that. That was one of the nights that I happened to be working down there. I want to show this. This is NJ Burkett. He's still a reporter in Channel 7. He's at the foot of the World Trade Center. The buildings they were both hit, and he was reporting live with his reporter, and he's doing like a take two here. So they were trying to get a shot. So let's play this.
Take two. Take two and 2, 1. This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents, and you can see the two towers. A huge explosion now raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way.
And people just ran away. This guy's on the back of an ambulance.
Yeah, that was after the South Tower was hit.
These are reporters. Just holding a reporter's notebook. People just covering their nose with it. That's what I was doing with my shirt. My belly wasn't as big as it is now, though, Ed, back then. This just gives you a good depiction of what happened there. And that was another an example of what, you know, everyday reporters, everyday workers, and people just went to work that day to support their families. And just a sad day, sad situation.
So shortly there, you know, several years later, I think 2004. Yeah, 2004. No, I'm sorry, 2003, December. I was in Yuma Air Station, Yuma Marine Air Station in Yuma, Arizona. And I met a Harrier jockey, a pilot for the Marines who flew Harriers. And he and I befriended each other while I was there. And he said, I want to share something with you. And I said, all right, what's going on? He said, so after 9/11, we got deployed to Afghanistan to fight the war on terrorism. And he had he's from New York, and he has a buddy in the NYPD, and he contacted his buddy, and he said, hey, do you have any NYPD stickers? And he said, yeah, sure. He goes, can you send them to me? So he did, but he never told him what he was going to do with them. So he never, and the detective that sent it to him never asked. So then when I was there, he showed me this, if I may present this. All right, let me see here. Share screen.
Hold on, let me just stop this so you can show yours. Okay. Look at that. NYPD sticker on one of the bombs.
Yeah, so he said he was going to drop that bomb. He was getting deployed, or on a mission rather, to go drop that bomb in Afghanistan. And he said this is from the NYPD.
That's a great story, and a great contact there. Wow. Many more unbelievable stories. But we could go on all day about this. My cousin Ralph Licardi, 30 years old, a father of two, 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, two boys who are now adults. Just went to work as a local 3 electrician, and Ralph was just one of those guys that if you had a problem, he was there to come and help you. My cousin was just a good, giving person. And I'll give you an example what he did for me 2 days before this happened. I had just finished this basement and brand new carpeting, so forth, and my washing machine line, the discharge line, cracked in the wall. And I had 100 gallons of water in my basement, brand new carpeting. And I panicked, and I was like, who do I know close by that's got like a shop vac? Because I didn't have one. I called Ralph, and he came. And he came from work, and it was his only, the World Trade Center, it was his second day there on the job. So he came from work, and he helped me pump out this water. And I want to just show a picture of Ralph with his family. My cousin, he helped me 2 days before this, and there's a great picture of him with his kids. And I'll go into some photos now. Photo 16 is me at his wedding. This is DutyRon with no beard, no mustache. Ralph's in the middle. His brother Anthony is here.
Dude, you look like a mafioso I knew.
Hey, easy. Oh, hey, we don't talk about that, Ed. So yeah, Ralph, may you continue to rest in peace, and all of our brothers and sisters who we lost from the police department, fire department, and the everyday people who just went to work that day. There's just so many who we lost. I was going to go to the reading of the names just to show the beginning of the ceremony, but CBS2 removed the video from YouTube, which is interesting. I don't know why. It says removed by uploader. But Ed, I wanted to play this if you got another 15 minutes. I know you're checking the markets now and you're looking for pictures.
No. Like I said, you know, all these text messages of my students. Just, yeah.
Go to it. I'm going to play this little piece right here. So this is from 9 Line Apparel. I'm actually wearing their gear here. I'm going to go full screen with me. So this is a Ground Zero shirt from 9 Line Apparel. They sent this to me, and it's got their stuff, but it says you know, a nice little statement, unshaken courage in the face of death, Ground Zero, and it goes over all of the. Hold on, let me move this. So it gives the fire department, the police department, and the Port Authority police on the members that they lost that day. So let's play their little. This is, if you guys haven't seen this, let me know in the chat by putting a 1. If you haven't seen it, put a 2 if you have seen this. I played this a few times, but this goes over what happened on September 11th. And it's the police commissioner of the city of New York at the time, Bernard Kerik.
I am in a situation where Americans learned a possible hijack.
Down?
Yes.
Why didn't he land?
He did not land.
We want to smoke and we just wanted you to know that we love you always.
Honestly, I'm calling from the plane. I want to tell you I love you. Please tell my children that I love them very much. And I'm so sorry they...
We're not ready to die. It's getting bad.
I'm on the 83rd floor. I'm going to die, aren't I? No. Say you're going to die. Live, say your prayers.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors.
All right, this is where we're going to start, at least. Yeah, we could do it right here, I think. On the morning of September 11th, I was in my office when the first plane hit Tower 1. I called the mayor. I told him I was coming. I would meet him at Tower 7. Tower 7 stood right here on this corner. Our command center was in the 23rd floor of Tower 7.
So I took off downtown, and we actually came down West Broadway toward Vesey Street. We were going to make a right on Vesey, and as we were, there were cops there, and a sergeant came up to the car screaming that, we couldn't turn onto the block, that people were jumping. And I didn't understand what he said, and I got out of the vehicle. And he salutes me, and he says, "Commissioner, they're coming down, they're jumping." And I looked up, and I could see debris coming off of the side of Tower 1 from 95 floors up. What I didn't realize until that debris got closer to the ground is that it was bodies. I think in that first probably 5 minutes I was there, I probably watched close to 2 or 3 dozen people come off the building. And they were hitting the ground, they were hitting the awnings between Tower 2 and Tower 1. They sounded like explosions when they hit the metal.
I couldn't get into New York City. All points of entry were closed down. And my best friend from 3rd grade, John Gomez, calls. He goes, "Are you watching this?" I said, watch what? I just dropped my son off at nursery school, you know, and I went home. Obviously, I knew instantly. I said, I knew what it was. Terrorism is real. Evil exists. In the last century, 100 million human souls were lost. And we've dealt with, in that 100-year period, fascism, communism, Nazism, Imperial Japan, the killing fields, Cambodia, Pol Pot. But all told, based on the history, 100 million souls were killed in the name of governments, in the name of some ism. The ism that we deal with now is terrorism.
About 3 minutes before the mayor got here, there was this enormous explosion, and we looked up, and the second plane was slamming through the north side of the building on top of us.
Another one just hit the building. Wow. Wow, another one hit it hard. Another one just hit the World Trade.
That's when I realized we were under attack. My staff, the bodyguards, we went behind Tower 7. We waited for the debris to come down. And Mayor Giuliani arrived about 3 minutes later.
Looked at the damage here. The mayor wanted to go down to West Street, so we actually walked down to West Street here, went to the side of the buildings, and to a temporary command post. We met with the first deputy commissioner, the chief of department, chief of operations from the fire department. We talked to them for about 10 minutes. And the mayor, he said, okay, I want to go back to the other side here, and where I was going to set up a temporary command post here. We came back up the block, and my guys had secured an office in that building. There was a Merrill Lynch office there, a small Merrill Lynch office. We were going to go in there. The mayor was going to call the White House. He wanted to speak to the president about getting air support.
Walked into that office. The mayor sat down at a desk, got on the phone, got through to the White House. Somebody came on the phone. They said, the president's not here. The vice president is going to come to the phone and talk to you. And about a minute and a half after they said that, they came back on the phone and they said, we have to go. They're evacuating the White House, and we think that the Pentagon just got hit. And the mayor hung up and he said, that's not good. And he told me what they said.
And all of a sudden, the building started shaking like a freight train was coming through the side of it. Somebody kicked open the door and yelled, it's coming down. And that's when Tower 2 was imploding.
The morning of 9/11, I actually was in my dorm room, and we watched it on TV. I went to class, I came back, we kind of saw what was going on. And my father was a fireman at the time in Rescue 4, so we knew he was working that day, but I didn't know exactly, where he was the morning of. I called my mother. I said, is Dad working today? And she said, yeah, he's working. I haven't heard from him yet, but I'll call you back later. And no one really knew what to do, because there wasn't a moment of exasperation where you're like, oh, it's over. Like, we know he's gone. It was kind of, he still might walk in the door. Every time the door opened, everyone would turn and say, oh, expect him to kind of walk in. And again, another day. And then kind of over the course of that week, we kind of eased into, he's not coming back. Like, we're pretty sure that he was lost in the collapse.
When the building came down, once that building started to shake, it blew out all the windows. There was smoke and gas and all this stuff. I remember thinking, we were in there. There was no way out. Couldn't get out. Couldn't go out the way we came in. It was all blocked off. So, and we couldn't breathe, which was the worst part of it. And I was thinking, like, all the stuff that I had been through in my career, I've been stabbed, gun battles, like all this stuff. And I'm going to wind up smothering to death in this office because we can't get out. And all of a sudden, a side door opened and these two maintenance guys showed up. And they were probably a shock to see the mayor, the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, see all of us in that room. They were about as shocked to see us as I was to see them. And I asked them, you have keys to get us out. We wanted to go west. I wanted to get out the other side of the building.
And they took us out a series of hallways all the way east until we came out on Church Street. That's how we actually got out of the building.
And I remember walking into that lobby and looking outside, and you could not see anything outside. It was pure white. It was like somebody took a sheet and put it in front of the window, and I thought, what is that? Like, what's out there? What happened? You know, was it a nuclear blast? Like, what was this? And they had these rotating doors, these circular rotating doors. And I remember going through the door, getting outside. And when we got outside, there was no sound. No more sirens, no birds, no car horns, no city sound, no sound, period. It was just like somebody stuck you in a soundproof booth. That's how condensed this dust and soot and gas was. It took out all sound, you know, and keep in mind, I was 4 or 5 blocks from the towers.
The men and women of the New York City Police Department, the Fire Department, and the Port Authority Police effected the greatest rescue mission in the history of the country. They took 20 to 25,000, maybe 30,000 people out of these buildings in this surrounding area. But then they also evacuated close to 1 million people out of southern Manhattan, from 14th Street down to Battery Park. Close to 1 million people were evacuated. And they were evacuated into Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, New Jersey, with the help of the New Jersey State Police, the Newark Police Department, the Jersey City Police Department. Everybody came together. There was unity like we haven't seen in years. There was resilience that we barely see these days. And it was a feat, I think, for the first responders, never been replicated prior, and hopefully it's never going to happen again.
I think one of the things that differentiated New York City and what we were doing, what happened on that day, to other municipalities, even state governments around the country, from 1996 to 2000, for 4 years, Rudy Giuliani created the Office of Emergency Management in the event of a crisis, an emergency in the city. And for those 4 years, 4.5 years, we constantly practiced for crisis, right? Trying to be proactive. Mock drills, tabletop exercises. And I would get a call on Saturday morning and they'd say that the mayor just called a mock drill tabletop exercise for a biochemical attack in the subway. At the time, I ran Rikers Island. I was the correction commissioner. And I would think, I run the jail system, like, it has nothing to do with me. But we had to go anyway. And on September 11th, all that training, everything that we had done for 4.5 years paid off.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That goes on for another 15 minutes. But we got kind of like, we're on a time schedule here, so it's going to be tough to play the rest of it. I'll link it in the description so you guys can all watch it. But Ed, I thought it was impressive that the former police commissioner, Bernard Kerik, said that they planned and trained with the forming the Office of Emergency Management by Rudy Giuliani. They did these mock drills, and he credited these mock drills to being ready for such a mass casualty like this. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, yes, I was part of a lot of those trainings because I'm a hazmat tech with the NYPD crime scene unit. So we participated in many of those major exercises with our emergency response community, FDNY, EMS, the hospitals, public health, and so forth. But, like anything, like Mike Tyson said, right? He was quoted and credited with saying, everybody has a plan until they get hit. Well, when we got hit, parts of the plans that we had were enacted and other parts were forgotten.
Right.
So some of the staging portions of the after action from the 1993 World Trade Center attack and, the subsequent planning for events like this in the future, we said we were never going to stage like this again. And unfortunately, that didn't get followed through. And because of that, there were many fatalities. In addition, the Office of Emergency Management put their headquarters, to put their office in 7 World Trade Center.
Jeez.
And 7 World Trade Center collapsed. So we lost our Office of Emergency Management. And at that time, we didn't have any redundancies. We didn't have any backup locations that the Office of Emergency Management had pre-positioned throughout the city and in parts of New Jersey that we have today. So what they did is they had to put a temporary Office of Emergency Management on the cruise pier lines. They had to build it real quick. They had to get all the infrastructure in there, all the IT, all the computers. Everything was hurriedly put into these 2 cruise line piers on the west side.
Where we go out and go on our cruises from, right?
Right. That's what, but again, lessons learned. We learned a lot of valuable lessons from this incident.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully never have to, have something like this happen again. But many say that, we got to always be on, on our watch, because you never know when evil and terrorism can strike again. Yeah, Ed, you are a legend in the crime scene unit. So that person didn't authenticate on Facebook, so we don't know who it is. So if you can tell us who you are in the next comment. Do you know Ed? Did you work with Ed? I'm curious. I put it out there publicly on Facebook. I went to the cemetery today to pay respects, as I do on September 11th, to my cousin Ralph. And I took a picture. There was many people there, and I want to show it. I'm not going to show it on the Streamyard. I'm going to show it on my phone. So this is at the cemetery. He has on top all of the electrical stuff, and I left my warrant squad business card on the end right over here. So this is just a picture from. I just want to show you another one because this one's really nice. This shows you the whole garden where his gravesite is, and then it's just a dedicated small little patch of land in the Holyrood Cemetery, and it's beautiful because it has all the names of all of the only World Trade Center victims can be buried and laid to rest there. And it's not just police and fire. There was a doctor there I saw. He's an electrician. So there's many other people. It's not just exclusively for the first responders. Ed, you got something you want to show?
Sure, I do too. Yeah, never worked with Eddie, but okay. Here. Let me just put this up before I do that, because he responded to you. Are you doing it too, or what?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we lost it. Hold on.
No, I can get it.
Yeah.
It's right here.
All right. Never worked with Eddie, but I was in the crime scene unit in 2012, and I heard your name from many detectives. Okay. Thank you so much, Vinny Falsetti. Oh, I know that name, Vinny Falsetti.
In 2016. Yeah.
Okay. So,
thanks, Vinny.
My son sent me this, and my son goes to my brother's cemetery plot every 9/11 to visit my brother, as many of my family members do. And like I said, I'm down here at my house in New Jersey with my parents, and we didn't go up to Staten Island. We went to church this morning and prayed for my brother, and I know he's watching. I know he's down looking over us all, and I know he's up there with our other relatives, and he's so proud of his 2 children, David and Brianna, who are both medical professionals. David is a physician's assistant and Brianna is a nurse. So I know he's quite proud.
Yeah. Outstanding. Hey, I want to just say thank you to all the people in the chat that were hanging out here watching us speak. And, again, this is not our full experience. We have to be here for hours to give you our full experience. There's so much that happened over the course of all the different tours that we did there on various different levels of expertise. I know, Ed, you worked probably doing, stuff with the medical examiners and whatever down the line. But, my cousin Ralph was identified through DNA.
Yes.
So when we went to the family center along that very pier, where the cruise ships go out at the, I think it was at the Armory there. So
Yes.
we gave Ralph's toothbrush, his hairbrush, and some of his undergarments and stuff. And they identified him in April of 2002, and a small piece of his leg was recovered. And I'm sure Barbara Butcher's office and the folks in the New York City Medical Examiner's office worked on my cousin's case. So I'm thankful, I'm grateful that they were able to bring my family member home, my cousin Ralph. So
right, it's a herculean. It was such a great effort that they put into identifying these victims, and their heart and souls go into it at the DNA lab, and they're constantly doing it. We just identified 2 more body parts earlier this week or last
Friday.
week.
It was on Friday.
Yeah, on Friday, right? And they're still going at it. We still have body parts that haven't yielded a genetic profile yet. And again, I keep telling you, as new techniques come out that have been validated, they'll pull these parts out and go at it again to try to get that DNA so that they can match back to these missing loved ones.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share one more thing before we depart.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right, I'm working on it.
I want to just get this off the screen. And I'm going to thank everyone for their super chats. I'll highlight those real quick. Oh, there's the flags. The thin blue line, the American flag, and the NYPD flag, correct?
That's it. That's where I'm flying today.
Let me go full screen. So this is right outside of Ed's compound in New Jersey. Is that your boat in the water?
It is.
All right. Awesome. Looks great. Thank you for sharing that, Ed. Thank you for taking out an hour and 20 minutes on September 11th to share with our community, what we did, our service on September 11th. And again, there's many, many heroes that were not first responders. That's, I'm talking about the janitors, the cooks, the chefs, the cleaners, the construction workers, the heavy crane operators who came and sacrificed, the carting companies, and got sick and have died. Many, many more people have perished from 9/11 World Trade Center related illnesses than what happened on that day. And I have the numbers written down: 2,977 victims, 19 Al-Qaeda terrorists attached to Osama bin Laden, and then the many, many more who died because of their health ailments. So,
and there was high school kids at the Stuyvesant High School. They didn't know what hit them. They didn't realize what was coming down in the future for them. From freshman to senior, those 4 years that were there at the time, they've come down and gotten sick, as well as people that work downtown, live downtown. There was a lot of mistakes made by the Environmental Protection Agency. So,
yeah, absolutely. All right, so thank you so much. I just want to start these super chats. I'm going to put them on the screen. Crime and Wine, thank you. 616 Love, thank you for being a member. Galen, thank you for that generous super chat. As she says, thank you for our service. Thank you, Jules. Thank you, Jules, again. Vet Girl, RWB, always generous, thanking us for our sacrifice and services. Thank you for your support. Misty, Jules, Misty again. Schmitty Smacks is always in there with super love. Thank you. Thank you, Gemma. Appreciate you. Thank you. There's so many of them that came in. New York Mom. I think I did highlight them, but I do want to go back over them again. Ain Patrick, thank you. My aunt was a search and rescue canine handler. Tells stories of how they had to decoy people in the rubble for the dogs to find. Dogs are struggling to work because of their mission is to rescue, not recover. Yeah, the dogs. Right. I have video of the dogs in the crates, in those cages, being suspended over the pile and like, you know, taken like on a zip line over from one side to another.
And those dogs were sentinels to what was to come for the humans, because the dogs that were being used at the pile would end up getting all kinds of cancers and dying well before we did. And we should have known that it was heading our way when the dogs started dying.
Yeah, so many of those dogs perished, and that you don't hear conversations like that. And dogs are man's best friend. They just work. They just do it.
When it comes to hazardous materials, whether it's chemical, biological, radiological, the animal and insect populations will be affected well before humans will. So that's why they're called sentinels.
There you go. We're always getting educated by Ed, so thank you for that. All right, so for those of you who are going to hang around, I'm going to play the remaining 15 minutes of this 9-line tribute to September 11th. If you guys want to hang around for it, you're welcome to hang around for it. If you don't, I understand. You could watch the replay, but I want to play it in its entirety because I think it's only fair that we play all of this for everybody. So on behalf of Ed Wallace and Crime Time with DutyRon, we send strength, prayers, and positive vibes to all of the victims' families, my family included, Ed's family included, and all of our extended family who are affected by loss from September 11th. And to those who are sick, like myself and Ed, we send strength and prayers to you guys too, because we never know when our number is going to get rung up, right? Ed, you've been fighting this fight for a long time. And every year I go and get checked, I always worry that is there going to be something additional that they find? And it's just it's a lifelong struggle that we'll always go through, Ed.
Yeah, me and Billy Ryan have many of the same issues from 9/11, and you know, I dedicated my life afterwards to training crime scene investigators and emergency responders in preparedness for such events, so that they can safely operate in these environments without getting sick.
Yeah, emotional day for all of us all around. So, on behalf of Ed Wallace and DutyRon, myself, Ron Liccardi, I want to thank you guys for all tuning in today for this special broadcast.
Thank you very much.
Yes, we're not going to end it by our familiar sign-offs because we're going to play the rest of it. Ed, I know you got to go. You got your parents there.
Yes.
And have a great rest of your day, Ed.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, guys.
Car horns, no city sound, no sound, period. It was just like somebody stuck you in a soundproof booth. That's how condensed this dust and soot and gas was. It took out all sound, you know, and keep in mind, I was 4 or 5 blocks from the towers.
The men and women of the New York City Police Department, the Fire Department, and the Port Authority Police effected the greatest rescue mission in the history of the country. They took 20 to 25,000, maybe 30,000 people out of these buildings in this surrounding area. But then they also evacuated close to 1 million people out of southern Manhattan, from 14th Street down to Battery Park. Close to 1 million people were evacuated. And they were evacuated into Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, New Jersey, with the help of the New Jersey State Police, the Newark Police Department, the Jersey City Police Department. Everybody came together. There was unity like we haven't seen in years. There was resilience that we barely see these days. And it was a feat, I think, for the first responders, never been replicated prior, and hopefully it's never going to happen again.
I think one of the things that differentiated New York City and what we were doing, what happened on that day, to other municipalities, even state governments around the country, from 1996 to 2000, for 4 years, Rudy Giuliani created the Office of Emergency Management in the event of a crisis, an emergency in the city. And for those 4 years, 4.5 years, we constantly practiced for crisis, right? Trying to be proactive. Mock drills, tabletop exercises. And I would get a call on Saturday morning and they'd say that the mayor just called a mock drill tabletop exercise for a biochemical attack in the subway. At the time, I ran Rikers Island. I was the correction commissioner. And I would think, I run the jail system, like, it has nothing to do with me. But we had to go anyway. And on September 11th, all that training, everything that we had done for 4.5 years paid off. Managing a crisis is probably one of the most important elements of something like this that you can imagine, because it ensures that you're getting everything done. There has to be an assurance that, one, you're getting stuff done, and two, that people are being held accountable if they're not.
It was a moment where it just awakens you to what the really dark side of the human experience can show. And then it shows you the lightest side, the brightest side, the best out of people. I'll never forget, I made a big deal of it at the time. So the days after, there was soot and ash, and I was there and I was reporting from there and doing TV from there, radio from there, and walking up, and you're just looking up at this mass of rubble. But then amazing thing happened. New Yorkers are not exactly known for their southern charm and hospitality, but Campbell's Soup sets up an entire soup kitchen, all free. Anybody who wants it, come eat. Stores, restaurants, they all opened up their doors. Everything was free.
The fire department's first deputy, chief of department, chief of operations, chaplain, when we met with them on West Street and we left, Tower 2 imploded about 50 minutes later. Every one of the guys we were with died.
When Tower 2 imploded.
When Tower 2 imploded. So, you know.
You had just spoken to them before that.
We had just spoken to them. We had just spoken to them. In fact, the chief of operations told us, he said, look, I don't think we have to worry about the towers coming down. He said, but we're going to lose everybody and everything above the impact zone. So in Tower 1, the impact zone was around the 95th floor. Tower 2 was around the 75th floor. So we anticipated there's going to be a lot of death and destruction in the top of the buildings. What nobody anticipated was the jet fuel was going to create an inferno. It was going to weaken the beams. And because the beams were so heavy, the structure wouldn't be able to hold it. And once they started to implode and collapse, they just came straight down. There was nothing stopping. There were pockets and voids underground where you would hope somebody got into, but you also had to keep in mind that it was close to 2,000 degrees, between 1,500 and 2,000 degrees underground, where these fires were still burning. The fires lasted for almost 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah. And we kept the rescue going for about 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks. And then it turned into a straight recovery case. And the recovery was difficult for a number of reasons, but most importantly, it was, you know, digging and getting down deep into the voids. But you had to remove 1 billion pounds of debris, right? And those beams, when you remember the beams that were sticking out of the ground at the time that held up the towers, the beams that the towers were made out of, they were about 1,700 pounds per linear foot.
Wow.
So if this stuff shifted, if anything moved, if that stuff fell, you know, it was going to kill somebody. So you couldn't have guys on the ground constantly. What we started doing at the end, you know, probably 2 months in, basically put a bunch of construction equipment down there, started moving the debris, and as that debris moved, we had spotters with binoculars. If they saw a body or a piece of a body or some human remains in some capacity, then they shut everything down, they stopped movement, and we basically went in and found or pulled out what they found. Keep in mind, we lost 400 first responders, 23 cops, 37 Port Authority cops, 343 firefighters. The reality is, many of them, I would say most of them, disintegrated. The first 2 cops, I think that we did find, my guys, out of the 23 we lost, they, when I got down to to ground zero, there were 2 Home Depot buckets, and in those buckets were the remaining pieces of a Glock, an exploded magazine, a set of handcuffs. Anything that was metal was there for these 2 cops. But I mean, think of this for a second. A bulletproof vest, a leather belt, boots, uniform, the body itself, gone. The only thing that survived was metal. And that was the only remains we had. It was like they were never there.
It's not really a rescue anymore, it's a recovery. So over the course of the next, I don't know, until May of 2002, it was a recovery operation where we just were digging to recover anybody who was lost so that we could return the remains to their families, give them some sort of closure. We were digging, me and my brother would go down and we would dig to recover the remains of my father and hopefully be the ones to carry him out. And that was the intent, was if they found him or if someone found him, we wanted to put the flag over the Stokes basket and carry him out ourselves. And we dug until May, until the floor was broom swept and there was nothing else to look through. And unfortunately, we didn't find any remains. We only found his Halligan, or his officer's tool, which had an R4 engraved in it for Rescue 4 and a KD for Kevin Dowdell. So we knew that was his. We recovered that about 2 weeks after the collapse. And that's unfortunately all we recovered from the site.
The first firemen that arrived here, the first cops that arrived, the station house that's right around the corner from the museum, those guys went into the towers. They were 50 floors up, 60 floors up in the tower. Tower 2 imploded. There was an evacuation call. And this talks, I think this talks a lot about the service of the people that were here that day. When the evacuation call was given, a lot of people evacuated. But I have to tell you, a lot of people didn't. I think a lot of people, first responders, I think a lot of them died because they knew people were still in those buildings and they wanted them out. And it just shows you the dedication, the perseverance, the courage, the heroism that was involved. It was the perils inherent with what you were doing, with the death and destruction of what was going on. It was obvious. So for those men and women that stayed down here and continued on in the rescue and recovery efforts, that's heroism that, I don't think has ever been replicated. I don't think we'll, hopefully we don't ever have to see it again, but you have to give the men and women in the first responders that were down there an enormous amount of credit for doing what they did.
On the morning of September 12th, there was just one thing in this country, and it was American. I told you earlier this story with the president. The president came to Ground Zero. He toured Ground Zero. If you recall, he stood out there with the bullhorn with the retired firemen and, talked to the firefighters and the first responders. And then we all jumped in the president's Suburban. And we headed uptown to the Javits Center so he could see the families of those that were missing. And he was so impressed with the thousands of people along the route to the Javits Center. Big signs, God bless America. And at some point he says, he's just so impressed with all this unity. And Mayor Giuliani looked at him and laughed. He said, Mr. President, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but nobody out there voted for you. He goes, we're on the west side of Manhattan. There are no Republicans. But it didn't make a difference. there were no political parties in the United States. There were none. You were American, but it took a tragedy. Is that what it really takes for us to unite and come together? You would think not. You would hope not. I'm not sure.
I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for making the nation proud. And may God bless America.
Thank you all for sticking around to the end. God bless all of you who are here supporting and that support the men and women, not only in law enforcement, but in our military, who fight to keep us safe, to fight to keep our freedoms. So on behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, I'm going to wish you guys a great day. And thank you for tuning in to this special episode. Peace for now. I'll see you soon.